Jacob here with, I'm usually with JMK something, but today mostly what I'm here for is some help with our favorite layout program, Eagle here. So I'm going to launch Eagle here, and I'll let you know that first of all I'm working on a Mac. I'm using version 6.2 Lite, and that my library that I primarily use, I have a lot of them as you can see here, is just a simple MadBean library with some tweaks and some additions that I've made for myself. You can grab the MadBean library from various places online, and if you want more details about that, go to the MadBean forum and do a search on Eagle libraries. So today what we're going to do is we're going to do a demo project here. I've got a project file here called Eagle, and in it here you can see I've got a demo project folder. I'm going to actually delete all of that for you. I'm going to delete all its contents and show you how I set that up. So once you've got a root folder in Eagle, which it makes you set up, what you're going to do is you're going to create a new folder here, and you can name it whatever you want. I'm going to name it Demo Project, because this is going to be a series of demos that we're going to do. So as I open it up, you can see it's absolutely empty. So the next thing I do is I right click on a Mac. You can also control or hold command and left, or control and left click, sorry. So control and left click. And I'm going to create a new project. We're going to call this the demo rat. I'm going to use a Proco rat, and we're going to show you how to set up both a schematic and then a layout, and then how to export both the layout and the Gerber files for being manufactured. Alright, so here we go. We've got our project opened up, and once we've got that in, basically it's created a folder on my computer that will house all the files as we begin to work on it. So the first thing we're going to do here is, you can see I've got a couple files here that we're going to open up. The first is the Proco rat distortion schematic, and this is something I found online. We're going to assume that it's correct, and that we're going to use this to create a new schematic version that we can use for ourselves. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is, as I right click on my little project here, you can see it's got a little green button here. If I double click on it, you see the green button goes away? That means the project is not open, right? So what I have to do is I have to open the project. So I double click, I get my little green dot, and now this is an open project, and this is what I'm working on. Okay, so if I, for example, wanted to work on something else, right, I can double click to close that one, and then double click this one, and you see stuff opens up, right, and so there you go, you get a little green dot. Now I can just switch over to this one. I'm gonna, sure, why not, right? So now what I've done is I've closed out that other one, the files are gone, the images are gone, and I'm opening in this project. Okay, so go to new here, I right click and go to new schematic. What's going to pop up is a blank slate for us to work with. And I'm going to set this up so that I can easily switch back and forth between our image here that we're working with and our schematic palette. So on our schematic palette we have a bunch of different tools across the top and some across the side here. So let me quickly go over some of them. There's an open button, a save button, a print button, and a cam button. We'll use the cam processor later, so just remember that that's an important button. We also have a switch button. This switches from a schematic view to a layout view. We don't need that yet, but we'll use it later. Okay, so we have some other buttons that generally don't get used here. These are our zoom buttons: zoom in, zoom out. This button here is great. It's zoom to fit, which basically fits the schematic precisely into the window that you have open. Alright, so then on this side over here we have some buttons that we need to be aware of. The first one here is our grid. Okay, so when we left click on the grid button, which is right here, we get a choice of how we want to view it. We can get the display on, so we actually see the grid. Turn that off. We can use a different style, lines or dots. We can also do size, and we can use a multiple. Okay, another thing you can do here is if you right click on the grid button, when you've got a grid set up, you can actually save it. So here, for example, I've got my grid set up. If you look at my grid, I use a size of 50 mils and a multiples of 2. Alright, so it's really simple, really easy to use, and I've got the finest control set up. I don't know what that precisely does, but go back to 50 mils. Okay, so that's my grid, right? And you can also change your grid, and then you can go to last, you can create a new grid, all that sort of stuff. So we go down here, there's some important tools for us to use here. Some of them only really apply when we're on our layout, but here are some good ones that we need to know. This is our move tool, probably the most common tool. Here's there are some quick shortcuts that we can use, but we can rotate an object using this button right here. This button is actually quite a few different things. It has a whole list of controls that you can do here, including aligning it apart, changing the font from proportional to vector or whatever. We can also affect the size of certain factors, the package of a part, all sorts of fun tools. This is our delete button right here, the big X. Right beside it is the add button. As I pull up my add button, we've got a huge number of parts here that I'm using right now, right? You can see here that I've got all of them are in specific files, right? And while I'm at it, I'm going to show you here. There are other tutorials that will show you how to upload libraries, but if I go back to my control panel here, I've got my libraries button here. If you right click on one, or control click, or whatever button you use, you can have a choice here to use all or use none. So I'm just going to turn all of my libraries off. Use none. Use none. Okay, so now they're off, and as I go back to my schematic here, as I add a part, there's nothing in my library here. So sometimes, if you are wondering where on earth is your library, if you go back here, and you here we go. Here's my updated library. Use all. Right. So now I've selected that library, and as I go here into my look, there's my library, all ready to go for me to use, depending on what particular part I'm looking for. Sometimes I may go over here and turn on a different library. Right. I can say use none of this and use all of this one. We'll left click on that, use all of this one. So there you go. See, now I've got a much different library. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to using this one and using all of this one. Okay, so we need some more things here. You can replace a part here. That's an important one. You can define a name and define the value of parts. These are very important tools. Here we've got, this is a draw a line button. This can be important, but I'll explain later why we would actually want to use the net tool most often. And we've also got electrical rule check and error buttons here. These are very important to us. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at our thing. We need to have an input and we need to have an output. So these are usually the first things I do. Now pay attention that this is usually just, this is the way I do things. This is not the only way to do things. If you like things differently, that's totally fine. I use a pad button here for creating my input and output. I use a little square, right? It creates it right there. Now if you look in the add menu button, you see this is the schematic view right here, and this is the actual PCB view. If you look, sometimes you'll see that there's a schematic part here, but there's no PCB, no board part right there. You don't want to use that, right? For example, here you can use out with a T in the, but if you use out without it, you get nothing on the board, and that's not good for if you need to have a pad for it. Now, likewise, if you add multiple out T's, you'll end up with more pads than not. So if you have to connect multiple things to one pad, what you would do is you'd use one output being the T and multiple outputs being, these would connect into out T without actually creating a new pad. But I'll show you how to do that soon. So here we go. We're going to add a pad here. If you rotate it, you can add it right there, but you can also press Control and rotate it, or if you're a right mouse button user, you can just rotate it automatically using your mouse. So I've got 3 parts here. I'm going to put this pad here for the input, put that pad there for the output, and I'm actually going to use this pad for something very specific later on that I'll describe. So I want 3 pads. We'll go back to our schematic here, and you'll see the first thing that after the input we need to use is an IC. So I'm going to go and add the IC. I find my IC part in here. In this particular library, it's GM-ICs. And I want an LM308. So I'm going to look here for an LM308. Now, a lot of times, you'll see that there is a menu here of different versions of something you can pick. Look, if you look here, this is always the key factor. You look at your board output here. So you want to have one that with pads that looks like a real part. This is a surface mount part. It'll be a lot tinier than you may be used to, and chances are high that you don't have the appropriate part in your stash. You should be using a dual inline package like this. Now, something you can also note is that with many parts, you can use a generic part. You can see here I've got here dual inline 8, right? I can go like this and create just a generic dual inline package. So this is great if you, for example, are looking through your library and like, I don't have an LM308. Well, you can use a dual inline package like this, and if you have the data sheet, which I'll show you in a second, you'll be able to, line it all up and make sure that it's, functioning correctly without actually having to have the specific part in your library that gives you. So that's a good backup plan, to use a generic part rather than, I do that with a PT2399, a delay chip. I use the dual inline 16 because it's just easier. Anyway, so going back here, we need this. So we'll add one here. I'm gonna be able to move this around. I can flip it, any which way I want. Right? I can even mirror it. This is a tool right here that will mirror it, so it just flips it. Here, I'll show you. Right? Flips it like that. Right? There we go. Okay, so here we go. As we look here, we need to go right into the plus side of the. Oh, wait a second. As you look here, the minus side goes up. If we're going to copy this directly, maybe we want to adjust this. But we can't just rotate it because, then it's facing the wrong direction. And that's where the mirror button comes in handy. So now what we've done is flipped it around and mirrored it, and we've got it ready to go. If I drop it in here, you can see I'm going to make this my input. What I can do is I can space it off right now, and I can draw a line that will connect from there to there. And look at that, they're connected. If we move these parts, they're all connected up. Now that's not necessarily the best or the easiest way to do things all the time. I'm going to delete that line. Sometimes what you can do is you can just take the part, drop it right together. You can see where the lines meet up there. And look at that, a line is created automatically. That's pretty rad. So it makes for a much faster way to do things. Okay, so once we've done that, we're going to space it out a little bit here. We're going to go back here and see what other parts we need. Well, we need a 30 PF part. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to find a capacitor that we would use for that size. Most of us would use ceramic. So here I go, GM caps, ceramic caps. And I've got two different size options here. Bigger ones and smaller ones. So what I'm actually going to do is, this is the smaller ones, I think. No, it's not. These are the smaller ones. Here, I'm going to use a 30 PF, and I'm going to use just a simple lead spacing. If you notice here, there's always details on the part that you can use right here. So this, for example, tells you that with this particular part that we're getting, we get a 5mm by 3mm package with 2.5mm lead spacing. That's what this is expecting, right? If you go here, right, this is a 5mm by 3mm with 0.3 inch pad spacing. Right, so you really get some details here if you really need them. Right, so I'm gonna pick this top one here. Press OK. There we go. We get a capacitor. Look at that. Okay, so where does this cap go? Because according to this this part here, I should have legs coming off here, and there's a 7 there, but it doesn't actually have a number designating that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to minimize all this stuff and pull up the data sheet.